Hey there, it's Cherie, and we are just a few weeks away from season 2 of The Summer I Turned Pretty. And with that, I figured we would go ahead and take a look back at the first book in the trilogy and talk about what happened the summer Belly turned pretty. So first, let's do a little backstory on the book. The Summer I Turned Pretty is the second published novel from the author Jenny Han. It is a coming-of-age young adult novel, and it was published on May 5th, 2009, and ended up becoming a New York Times bestseller. Jenny Han is also the author of the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy. I read the first 2 books in that trilogy. I didn't end up getting to the third book. I was annoyed at the end of the second one, so I pretty much didn't read the third one. But you know what? This video is not about that series. This video is about To All the Boys I Love. Nope. This video is not about that trilogy. This video is about The Summer I Turned Pretty. And just so you know, there will be spoilers. Some summers are just destined to be pretty. When each summer begins, Belly leaves her school life behind and escapes to Cousin's Beach, the place she has spent every summer of her life. Not only does the beach house mean home away from home, but her favorite people are there. Susanna, her mother's best friend, and Susanna's sons, Conrad and Jeremiah. Belly has been chasing Conrad for as long as she can remember, and more than anything, she hopes this summer can be different. Despite distractions from a new guy named Cam and lingering looks from Conrad's brother, Belly's heart belongs to Conrad. Will he offer his to her? Will this be the summer that changes everything? So that is the summary that's on the back of my copy of the book. And now let's get into it and talk about it. So the first thing I want to say is I do not like the name Belly. I just don't. I spent a lot of time reading this book hoping it was just a nickname and not what was actually on her birth certificate. Luckily for me, finally on page 111, I learned her name is Isabel. Why not Izzy? Why was Izzy not the nickname she was given? Why even go with Belly as a nickname? Then I remember from reading that her dad gave her the nickname Belly. And also Belly doesn't like the nickname Izzy, but she does like Belle. Why not just go with Belle? Let's do a rundown of the characters. We have our main character, Belly, or Isabel, her mother, Laurel, her brother, Stephen, her mother's best friend, Susanna. Beck is her nickname. That's her maiden name. Conrad, Susanna's older son. Jeremiah, Susanna's younger son. Cam, a guy from the beach. And Taylor, Belly's best friend. There are some other characters that show up throughout the story, but those are pretty much the main players. I think I'll do a ranking of these characters later on, so you'll see how I feel about each of them. So the story begins with Belly. I've given up and decided to use the nickname that she was given. I figure this is the nickname that she was given for this story, and everyone calls her that anyway. So it begins with Belly on her way to the beach. Her brother Stephen is driving with her mother in the back. They're singing in the car, and Belly is excited to get back to the beach house. This is a beach house that her and her family go to every summer. They meet up with Susanna and her 2 boys there. While they're driving, her brother Stephen decides to ask her if she is thinking about Conrad. Then her mother chimes in because she thought that there might be something going on between her and Jeremiah from the summer before. We're kind of getting a setup of which boy will Belly choose. We end up going into the backstory of Laurel and Susanna. They've been friends since they were 9. Then Belly lets us know that Susanna told her that she was destined to be with one of her boys. Again, continuing on with which boy will Belly choose. So they get to the house and the boys come out to greet them. There are moments with Belly between each of the boys. Both of the boys notice that Belly isn't the same Belly that she's been in past summers. Conrad tells Belly that he liked her better before with her glasses and ended up teasing her about her freckles. And Jeremiah gives her a big bear hug and lets her know, you just look different. We don't really get much description on these characters and their look. That's an author's choice. Some do it, some don't. Throughout the story, we do get some minor things like puberty happening or the glasses comment that I mentioned. I don't think it has much effect on the story for not including it. I just use my imagination while reading it. So Belly is back at the beach house, which is her favorite place, with Conrad, her crush, and Jeremiah, who is just her friend. And the boys have seemed to finally look at Belly like she's a real real girl and not just someone's sister. So throughout the story, we do get some backstory. There are chapters that start out telling us Belly's age at the time. These are dispersed throughout the book, not in chronological order, but today I'm going to do them in chronological order. Age 9. Belly is playing card games with everyone. She's playing hearts with Conrad as her partner because he's a good winner. There was a secret look between Laurel and Susanna when Laurel said that Belly was her father's daughter. Age 10. This was the moment Belly fell in love with Conrad. She wanted to go with the boys to the beach. They were taking sleeping bags and going to build a fire. Her brother Stephen was being mean to her. Jeremiah ended up joining in on the teasing of her with Stephen, but Conrad was different. He ended up standing up for her. He told them to cut it out and he said goodbye to her as they were leaving. Age 11. Belly and Stephen have sibling bickering in front of Conrad and Jeremiah. Belly and Conrad share a dance, and Belly wished for Conrad when she blew out her birthday candles. Age 12. We first see Conrad ask Belly to go to the boardwalk, but she gets heartbroken when she realizes that he went to the boardwalk to see another girl. He only invited her because he didn't want to go alone. Then, Jeremiah tells Belly that he knows she likes Conrad. Age 13. More is talked about Susanna's breast cancer, and Belly and Jeremiah get closer. Age 14. Belly brings her best friend Taylor to the beach with her. Taylor was flirty with both Conrad and Jeremiah. Belly was jealous over it, especially with Jeremiah since he was the one reciprocating the flirting with Taylor. Belly has her first kiss with Jeremiah during Truth or Dare, and Belly catches Taylor making out with her brother Stephen. And that's the backstory on Belly and her relationship with the boys. We'll get back to present day now. So Belly is back at the beach. She's 15 years old now. She now has these boys she has known forever look at her differently. She also ends up staying at the beach that summer without her brother. He ends up leaving to go look at colleges with their dad. So we'll get back to the boys in a moment. Let's talk about Susanna, their mother. There is a mention of Susanna not doing certain things that she would normally do, like her being outside to greet Belly and her family when they showed up. She was instead taking a nap. At that moment, I figured something was going on. Then we end up finding out that she has breast cancer. And the way that her and Laurel, Belly's mother, were acting that summer, I had a feeling things weren't going well. I was definitely preparing myself for the worst. We did not get that though. We do get glimpses of Belly seeing that there is an issue when she comes back to the beach house and she finds that her mother and Susanna are fighting. They say it's nothing, but Belly doesn't believe them. Back to the boys. I want to add a quote from the book here. A quote that I think Belly needs to think about a lot. She was talking about Mr. Fisher and Susanna. Mr. Fisher is Susanna's husband and the boy's father. He only shows up in this book for a phone call, and it was mentioned that he would only come on the occasional weekend in August. Belly did think that Mr. Fisher was good looking, but she didn't know if Mr. Fisher was as good looking as Susanna was beautiful. She did mention that maybe it is because she loves Susanna so much and didn't know who could measure up to her in her mind. So the quote is, "Sometimes it's like people are a million times more beautiful to you in your mind. It's like you see them through a special lens, but maybe if it's how you see them, that's how they really are. It's like the whole tree falling in the forest thing." That is what I think Belly has done with Conrad. I don't think she really knows him. She's created a version of him in her head and decided this is who he is. As I was reading the book, I really could not understand why Belly liked Conrad, or I guess as she says, loves him. I know we get some backstory on how she thinks she fell in love with him, which was when he stood up for her, but that still didn't feel like enough. Conrad felt like an elusive character that Belly herself could not describe. Her description of him was dark, 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 and he was unattainable and unavailable. It's like she decided one day that this is a guy I want, and that's it. Susanna said she was going to end up with one of her boys, and to Belly, that meant that she had to end up with Conrad. We do know that Conrad had been going through a lot of things that summer. There is his mother's cancer, then also a mention of their parents getting a divorce because of his father's cheating. Maybe I'm being biased because I didn't really like Conrad as a character, but I didn't really like any of the scenes with Belly and Conrad. He came off a little bit creepy to me. No offense to anyone who likes him, he was just way too overprotective. Now, Jeremiah, on the other hand, I felt like him and Belly actually had a connection. I'm not saying that Belly should actually end up with Jeremiah, I am good with by the end of the trilogy, Belly doesn't end up with either. I guess I'll find out once I finally read those books. But she described Jeremiah as being her friend. He was nice to her and the kind of boy that still hugged his mother. He also apparently never got embarrassed. I feel like Belly felt more comfortable being around him, possibly because she thought they were just friends, but the jealousy that Belly had whenever Jeremiah talked to another girl. She was jealous of Taylor when Jeremiah would return the attention. I think she just didn't want to admit those feelings, but the jealousy was definitely there. Then we have Cam, the new guy. So Belly finally goes to a party and that's where she sees Cam. She very much liked his eyelashes. So they started talking and they realized that they had known each other from before. They had met at the Latin convention in Washington, D.C. in the 8th grade. He also called her Isabel, so he got some points from me. They ended up chatting for a bit, but then there was this weird moment with Conrad. Again, I'm not a fan of their interaction. Cam ended up giving her his hoodie though, so that was cute. Now Belly has a love interest, a whole new love interest. One that is actually interested in her back, or will at least admit to being interested in her. She talks to him on the phone, they go on dates, he comes over. They end up having a good time. But he also has to deal with all the other boys in Belly's life. It doesn't seem to be fun for him. Then a weird thing happens when Belly goes to a party with Cam. And of course, the weird thing involves Conrad. So Belly was being teased by Conrad and Jeremiah before going to the party with Cam. And they even decided to show up for some reason. And I don't think they were going to end up going to the party before Belly even mentioned it. But at the party, Belly and Cam end up spotting the boys. And of course, Belly has jealous moments over both of them, even while she's on a date. Jeremiah was doing karaoke and all the girls were watching him all googly-eyed. At least that's what Belly narrated. Then Conrad ends up hanging out with the girl he was hanging out with earlier. Her name is Nicole, and she may or may not like the Boston Red Sox. She wears a Boston Red Sox hat. She might just like the hat. So Cam ends up introducing himself to the boys. He says his name is Cam, and then he adds Cameron. So of course Jeremiah, the jokester, decides that his name is Cam Cameron. They end up laughing. And Belly, she kind of pisses me off here. She ends up mentioning that she's embarrassed. Not for Cam, but of Cam. Really, Belly? This is a guy that you seem to like, and now all of a sudden you are embarrassed by him because Conrad and Jeremiah are laughing at him? This is a moment I really knew Cam didn't stand a chance. I didn't necessarily think that his chance was higher earlier, but definitely higher than what it was in that moment. She continues to talk to him throughout the rest of the summer, but then she pretty much ghosts him. At one point after he realized that she was cozying up to him on the couch one night just to make Conrad jealous. But back to that party. It seems Conrad is drunk and he's trying to get in a fight. Not with Cam, but with some other guy. Of course, Belly has to intervene and then Jeremiah does as well. And then Belly ends up going home with Jeremiah and Conrad and leaves Cam at the party. Belly is upset because she believed that Conrad had ruined her first real date. No, Belly. No, honey. He did not ruin it. You did. That was you. Then there was this moment where Conrad started to play with her hair in the car. He was in the back seat and she was in the front. He was about to say something, but then Jeremiah returned. And the next day, Belly was upset because Conrad had pretended like nothing happened. Like he wasn't playing with her hair the night before and about to say something that would change everything. He treated her the same. He didn't ignore her. He just treated her exactly the same. Then Belly says, the thing was, whether he was pushing me away or pulling me toward him, I was still going in the same direction, toward Conrad. Reading this quote again makes me want to go meditate. I may need a moment. Okay, back to the book. She ends up going on another date with Cam, and this time to the drive-in. I went to the drive-in a couple years ago. It was actually fun. I might have to do that again. But back to Belly. She ended up worrying that her going to the drive-in with Cam meant that they were going to end up making out. Nothing happened though. So earlier, Belly was just so upset whenever Jeremiah or Conrad would joke and that they would tag along with Belly and Cam. This is also Belly. I wish Steven and Jeremiah were out there in the dark somewhere, spying on us and cracking up. It would make me feel comforted somehow, safer. Also Belly. He didn't look over and laugh with me during the funny parts the way Jeremiah did. Belly, can you go a couple hours without thinking about at least one of the brothers? Especially when you're on a date? So after the movie, he ends up taking her home. Belly seemed disappointed. He does tell her when he drops her off that the reason he remembered her was because she was the prettiest girl he had ever seen. That is sweet, Cam, but your chances less and less by the day. They did kiss though. Her second kiss, but she does mention that she wished it had been her first, which is weird because whenever she's with Cam, she can't stop thinking about the brothers. And also, I'm not buying it. You not having feelings for Jeremiah, Belly. I don't buy it. Speaking of Jeremiah, he remembered to get Belly a birthday gift. Unlike someone else, I know, he's going through things and people go through things differently. Belly also didn't tell Cam about her birthday, but Jeremiah does get her a charm to add to her charm bracelet. Very sweet. But let's skip to the part where Jeremiah finally professes his feelings. I was wondering when it would happen while I was reading, but it finally does. Belly doesn't want him to though. He was going to say something I didn't want to hear. He was going to go and change everything. He does in fact say it. He wants her to want it too, but it is always going to be Conrad. He accepts it, but isn't happy about it. Makes a comment like, why is it always Conrad? Before walking away, which, okay. I mean, the next chapter is a backstory where Jeremiah pretty much talks about how his father has always liked Conrad better. So maybe that has something to do with it. Helicopters. I don't think there's any helicopters in this book, but there's definitely a helicopter up there. As I mentioned earlier, her thing with Cam is over. He called the house a few times, but she didn't answer. Jeremiah had complained about his feelings, and Belly thinks it's time for her to do that as well. Tell Conrad how she feels, that is. It's going to go great, right? So she tells him how she feels, and his response, well, you shouldn't. I'm not the one. Sorry. I believed him when he said it too. I really did. Belly doesn't though. She ends up going in on him, telling him she doesn't believe him and that he's lying and how he was jealous of Cam. He knew how I felt and he let me love him. He wanted me to. Then somehow Conrad turns it on her. 1 minute you like me, then Cam. Conrad paused, and then Jeremiah. Isn't that right? You want to have your cake and eat it too, but you also want your cookies and your ice cream. Telling her that she's the one who has been playing games. I had to flip back through the book and try to figure out what he was talking about. Now, do I think that she had feelings for all three boys? Sure, at some point. However, I don't think she was playing games with any of them. Well, maybe Cam, possibly Cam. I don't think she was playing games with Jeremiah, and I definitely don't think she was playing games with Conrad. They continue to argue, and then Conrad does something that he shakes her. He shook her. I repeat, he shook her. What? Again, Conrad, not my fave. He does end up stopping himself when he realizes what he's doing, but still. So Jeremiah comes out and he sees that Belly is crying. Him and Conrad get into a fight over Conrad not dealing with things. Nothing to do with Belly. Maybe a slight punch from Jeremiah had to do with Belly, but it was mostly over family stuff, like their mother's cancer and their father's actions. The fight ends up getting broken up by Laurel and everyone goes their separate ways. We do get a touching scene between Belly and Susanna. Well, touching until Susanna says, he needs you. She asks Belly to look after him. Belly didn't need for Susanna to tell her who she meant, but I needed Susanna to stop. Conrad has some issues that he needs to figure out, and I don't think Belly needs to be the one who holds his hand. This boy needs to do it himself. So Belly goes out to find Conrad. She would take care of him like Susanna wanted. I'm pretty sure I internally screamed at this point. That brought me back to Belly only wanting Conrad because of Susanna wanting it. And I'm still not happy with Susanna for putting that on her. Belly ends up finding Conrad. He opens up and they kiss. There are a couple more chapters after that. There is a goodbye scene with Belly, Conrad, and Jeremiah by the pool. They're playing around like they would any other summer. Then the last chapter is during the winter time, and Conrad ends up calling Belly and wonders if she is still coming with him. Where in the world are you going, Belly? I guess I'll just have to find out whenever I read book 2. Hopefully soon. And that is what happened the summer Belly turned pretty. I'd say I only had a few issues with this book. Number 1, Conrad shaking Belly. Not cool. That is not cool at all. And number 2, chapter 28 is pretty problematic. They are teens, but still a bit problematic. Taylor says to Conrad, don't be so gay. Jeremiah does call her out on it though. And Taylor of course responds with the, I didn't mean anything by it response. Then later in that chapter when Belly and Taylor start fighting over Belly finding her with her brother, Belly calls her slutty. Not cool, Belly. Not cool. Now to my ranking of the characters. I'm sure you'll be so surprised who's at the bottom. And I'll start with my least favorite. So at the bottom, we have Conrad. Maybe I'll start to like him in the other books, but now that is where he will stay. Right above him is his mother, Susanna. I really don't like how she put Conrad on Belly. I get that she wants her son to be looked after, but don't make that Belly's responsibility. Next, I guess I'll put Stephen here. He wasn't there a lot in the book with him leaving early, but when he was there, he was picking on his sister. And as a younger sister with brothers, he deserves to be here. Next is Taylor. I didn't necessarily like how she was going after the boys when she knew how Belly felt about them. Then again, it isn't like Belly owns them. Also, her comment in chapter 28, still not cool. Next is Laurel. She seemed like a good mom. I know her and Belly butt heads every once in a while, but that can happen with mothers and daughters sometimes. I like when Belly learned that the dress that she wanted was bought by her mother and not Susanna like she thought. Next is Cam. He didn't really do anything wrong here. He just liked someone that was already hung up on somebody else. He was sweet. Not sure if he'll show back up in the rest of the series though. Then we have Jeremiah. What can I say? I really like Jeremiah. Again, I don't think Belly needs to end up with him, but she should definitely stop being jealous when other girls speak to him. And at last, we have Belly. I was kind of surprised she's number 1 on my list. She did annoy me a bit, but I did find myself rooting for her a lot. I definitely did like her as a main character. Well, that's all I have on the Summer I Turned Pretty. I did enjoy reading this. It was a fun, quick read and exactly what I was looking for when I decided to pick it up. I do have the other 2 books in the trilogy and I definitely need to read these books very soon. Since the TV show comes back sometime in July, I'll most likely end up doing videos on those as well. And I definitely want to read these before season 2 comes out of the TV show because I don't know if they're going to combine books 2 and 3 into season 2, kind of like what they did with the Shadow and Bone series. So I definitely want to be prepared. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day and I will see you next week. Bye!